On this week's Vaticano, we look back at the year 2013, Benedict XVI's last moments, and the day the world met Pope Francis. We talk to someone who lived the year of faith up close in Rome, and a friend tells us what Benedict XVI is up to. Also, the energetic Pope Francis publishes 2 letters titled The Light of Faith and The Joy of the Gospel, and we take a look back at World Youth Day, the largest celebration of faith on earth for young adults. All this, plus we take a look at the Pontiff's trips over the last year, coming up.
"2013, the year of 2 popes, the year of faith, the year of transition." On February 11th, Benedict XVI announced that he would be resigning. It had been over 600 years since any pope had done so.
Viterum curam Deo explorata, ad conditionem certam perveni.
After having repeatedly examined my conscience before God, I have come to the certainty that my strengths, due to an advanced age, are no longer suited to an adequate exercise of the Petrine ministry. I am well aware that this ministry, due to its essential spiritual nature, must be carried out not only with words and deeds, but no less with prayer and suffering. However, in today's world, subject to so many rapid changes and shaken by questions of deep relevance for the life of faith, in order to govern the bark of St. Peter and proclaim the gospel, both strength of mind and body are necessary, strength which, in the last few months, has deteriorated in me to the extent that I have had to recognize my incapacity to adequately fulfill the ministry entrusted to me. For this reason, and well aware of the seriousness of this act, with full freedom, I declare that I renounce the ministry of Bishop of Rome, successor of St. Peter, entrusted to me by the cardinals on the 19th of April, 2005, in such a way that as from the 28th of February, 2013, at 20 hours, the See of Rome, the See of St. Peter will be vacant, and a conclave to elect the new Supreme Pontiff will have to be convoked by those whose competence it is.
And on February 28, he said goodbye, retiring to a life of prayer. Less than 2 weeks later, cardinals from around the world, 116 of them, gathered in Rome and made their way to the Sistine Chapel to elect his successor. On the evening of the second day of voting, Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio from Buenos Aires, Argentina, was chosen. He took the name Francis.
Buonasera.
Dear brothers and sisters, good evening.
Voi sapete,
you know that the duty of the conclave was to give Rome a bishop. It seems that my brother cardinals picked him from almost the ends of the earth. But here we are. I thank you for your warm welcome. And now let us begin this journey, bishop and people, this journey of the Church of Rome, which is the one that leads all the churches in charity, a journey of fraternity, of trust between us. Let us always pray for one another. Let us pray for the world, so that this might be a great brotherhood. I hope that this journey of the Church that we begin today, and in which my Cardinal Vicar here present will assist me, will be fruitful for the evangelization of this beautiful city. Now I would like to impart the blessing, but first I ask a favor of you. Before the bishop blesses the people, I ask that you pray to the Lord that he bless me. The prayer of the people asking a blessing for their bishop. Let us pray in silence this, your prayer for me.
Questa preghiera de voi su di me.
9 months have since passed, and the world is starting to get an idea of who this Pope is. His hallmark charity, his endless greetings, his concern for the weakest. It seems his appeal has no borders. He was actually the most talked about person on the internet this year. 2013 was a year of renewal, a busy one that brought with it great change, but also great joy. Former Pope Benedict XVI asked the Church to celebrate a year of faith from October 2012 to November 2013. He saw that simply raising awareness of modern-day difficulties was not enough to take people to Christ. EWTN's Rome Bureau Chief was at the closing Mass, in which Pope Francis handed her and many others a document on the year of faith.
It was amazing. And as some EWTN friends of mine who were on the Sagrato at the Mass to end the year of faith, they said as I came down the steps after getting the apostolic exhortation from Pope Francis, they could see my mouth go, wow. So I got a big kick out of that, but that's how I felt, wow, and kind of awesome. And you know what was so amazing for me? I'm going up to see the Holy Father, which in itself is amazing. But all I could think of was moments earlier, well, in the Mass, during the Creed, the Pope had held in his hands the reliquary with the bones, 8 bones, of St. Peter, his predecessor. And for me, in this amazing moment, I am now taking from the Pope's hands, the successor of Peter, I am now taking this document that he himself has written, the first one that was not a collaboration. And I'm thinking like 2,000 years of history in my mind, just in that split second. St. Peter, his successor 2,000 years later, Pope Francis, in this wonderful place dedicated to St. Peter, the Basilica in the Square, handing me this document on the year of faith. Ending the year of faith, formally Sunday was the end of the year of faith, but the door is just opening to what we all have to do as evangelizers. And so the Mass ended the year of faith, and you look back at the last year, and it seems like it's got to be 5 years for everything that happened, because you have the opening of the year of faith by a different Pope. It was Pope Benedict XVI, now Pope Emeritus Benedict, who decided that the Church needed this year of faith. And he opened it on October 11th, 2012, which was the 50th anniversary of the start of Vatican Council II, at which he was present, Benedict. And it was also the 20th anniversary of the presentation of the new catechism of the Catholic Church, which John Paul had ordered. So, and I was there for that as well, as a matter of fact, reporting on it for the Vatican Information Service. So very historical moments. I knew I was part of history Sunday, even though I have met other popes, and even just a single meeting is personal history. I was part of church history. And the relics, it's the first time ever in 2,000 years that any of us have seen the relics. So the picture is on the internet of, because the box was opened at the beginning of Mass, the relics were on a pedestal near the altar and closed, and then the box was opened. And the Vatican newspaper and TV got pictures of the bones inside.
Joan has covered Year of Faith events for EWTN since it began.
The highlights were so many if you take just the events, the celebrations connected with the Year of Faith. The crowds that came to St. Peter's Square, but then another important event, the obvious conclave that elected Pope Francis, and the crowds that were coming to St. Peter's Square were massive, and continued. One of the most recent, well, there were the catechists, was one of the last ones. Catechumens he received, of course, just the day before the final Mass. And then a couple weeks ago, we had the meeting with families, the celebration of families. I mean, like 200,000 people were in St. Peter's Square on Saturday afternoon for the so-called vigil, and almost the same number, I think, on Sunday for Mass. So the massive crowds, the very vibrant participation, the very vibrant faith that we saw in all these people who came to Rome, and it kind of gives you hopes for the future, for what we are now to do, all of us as evangelizers, each one of us in our work.
According to Joan, Pope Francis uses the word joy 59 times in the document on the Year of Faith. He says we should have joy in our faith. Joan says his document has a very conversational tone and that it's an easy read for anyone, especially for those who love the Church.
My impression is that Pope Francis, he wants a better church. What we know, he wants the church to go out of itself, to be out there where people need the church to be. And his huge emphasis on the poor, which it plays a very big role in this. The Pope wants us to go out there. He wants us, first of all, to start with ourselves, Christians, the church as an institution, to become better. And if we, as Christians in church, can become better, then we should be able to better society, create a better society, and by extension, a better world.
Stay with us. After a quick break, we'll be back to look at the major papal activities and teachings of the last year. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano.
Benedict XVI said when he stepped down that he'd be retiring to this old convent, Mater Ecclesiae, for a life of prayer. The psychiatrist and theologian has been in to visit him. He says that's exactly what he's been doing.
He said he didn't leave the service of St. Peter, but he lives the service of St. Peter in another way. He is praying, and this is an important aspect, he said, of the service of St. Peter. So for me it was a real, it was a vision for me, an emotional vision that Pope Francis is there, the Pope, and behind Pope Francis there is another Pope Benedict, who is praying like Moses for Pope Francis and the Church. And this is an image that for me is very hopeful. Mentally he was very good. He had a better memory than me. So mentally he is very good. He is old. He is old physically. He is old. That you can see.
We've seen Benedict XVI just a few times since February 28. After his first meeting with Pope Francis at Castel Gandolfo, there was this event, the July 5th unveiling of a statue of St. Michael the Archangel in the Vatican Gardens. And then, on October 13th, the statue of Our Lady of Fatima was brought to the Vatican, and Benedict XVI was the first person to see it. On his way back from Brazil, Pope Francis told journalists that having Benedict XVI so close is like having a grandfather, a wise grandfather, living at home. Two major papal documents were released in 2013. The first, Lumen Fidei, the light of the faith. It was called the encyclical written by 4 hands.
This encyclical about faith is a program for us, for the Church, in the future, because faith belongs to our life, but belongs also to the path of every community. And for this reason, to believe, as Pope Francis says, is also a responsibility to stay in the world and to build up this world with a responsibility in order to have justice, solidarity and peace. But we cannot forget also that believe and to believe, it means also to have light in our life. Light and love. So both are the conditions in order to be true believers in the world.
The encyclical invites the faithful to keep the light of the faith alive in their hearts and to share it always with others. Then there's the more recent Evangelii Gaudium, or the Joy of the Gospels, Pope Francis' own creation. It was released at the end of November. In it, the Pope calls the faithful to return to the root of the Christian message, to the joy that is in us. He does so using a language that is accessible by everyone.
Without a doubt, it is often the case in life that the difficulties, the thousands of worries, make it hard for us to experience the happiness of living with Jesus and of having received Jesus into the everyday events of our lives. The Pope reminds us all that already from the times of the Old Testament, but most of all since the times of the New Testament, from the beginning, the proclamation of Jesus has been marked by happiness. As you know, at the Last Supper, Jesus told his disciples, "I tell you these things so that my happiness might be in you, and that your happiness might be complete." This is a root problem, and for this reason, the Pope says two things that are very striking. He says that many Christians have Lent without Easter, and that there are too many times when would-be evangelizers have the face of someone at a funeral. This must not be. And I believe that we have to rediscover the joy of being with Jesus, of deep conversion, of feeling loved by the Father, and living this conversion fully.
Both of these and all other papal documents can be found on the Holy See's www.vatican.va website. July 22nd to the 29th, Pope Francis was in Brazil for the largest youth party on earth. It's World Youth Day, and this time it was in Rio de Janeiro. It was Pope Francis' first overseas trip, and it took him back to his native Latin America.
I am here to meet young people coming from all over the world, drawn to the open arms of Christ, the Redeemer. They want to find a refuge in His embrace, close to His heart, to listen again to His clear and powerful appeal. Go and make disciples of all nations. These young people are from every continent. They speak many languages. They bring with them different cultures. And yet, they also find in Christ the answer to their highest aspirations, held in common. And they can satisfy the hunger for a pure truth and an authentic love which binds them together in spite of differences.
Due to the rain, most of the week-long events were around the Rio oceanfront, but he did fly out for a special visit to the Marian Shrine at Aparecida as the week began.
Today I have come here to ask Mary, our Mother, for the success of World Youth Day, and to place at her feet the life of the people of Latin America.
And back in Rio, he spent time at the city's Varginha shantytown and met 30,000 Argentinian youth who had come to see their countryman. But Copacabana Beach was the main venue where he addressed over 3 million pilgrims all at once. He called them to be firm in their faith. Among other events, Pope Francis participated in the Way of the Cross and an evening of Eucharistic adoration with the millions gathered. Then, in the culminating moment on July 29, he invited the young people to become missionaries themselves.
As you return to your homes, do not be afraid to be generous with Christ, to bear witness to His gospel. In the first reading, when God sends the prophet Jeremiah, He gives them the power to pluck up and to break down, to destroy and to overthrow, to build up and to plant. It is the same for you. Bringing the gospel is bringing God's power to pluck up and break down evil and violence, to destroy and overthrow the barriers of selfishness, intolerance, and hatred, so as to build a new world. Jesus Christ is counting on you. The Church is counting on you. The Pope is counting on you. May Mary, Mother of Jesus and our Mother, always accompany you with her tenderness. Go and make disciples of all nations.
Vayan y hagan discípulos a todos los pueblos. Amen.
The next World Youth Day will be in Krakow in Poland in 2016.
Stick around, we'll be back with a review of the papal trips of the last year after the break. Thanks for watching. This is Vaticano.
Pope Francis is known for his work ethic, and it shows in his rigorous timetable. In addition to a heavy schedule of audiences, public and private, he has also added some trips to the mix. Beyond Brazil for World Youth Day, his local trips within Italy cannot be forgotten. His very first was to Lampedusa in July. The Italian island is just 80 miles off Tunisia and a gateway to Europe for Africans fleeing poverty. There, Pope Francis said Mass for migrants, condemning global indifference to their plight. Just hours before his plane landed, a boat with nearly 200 Eritreans had reached the island. He was offered a warm welcome with banners like "Pope Francis, only you can save us," and "You're one of us." Papa Bergoglio then traveled to the island of Sardinia, where he denounced idolizing money. He told thousands of people gathered at the city of Cagliari that he knows well what it's like to suffer from financial crisis. The Pope said although both the islands of Lampedusa and Sardinia similarly face immense suffering, they also face hope.
A suffering, the lack of work that leads you to, excuse me if I'm a little direct, but I say the truth, feel as if you are without dignity. Where there is no work, there is no dignity. And this is not a problem solely in Sardinia, but it's bad here. It's not only a problem of Italy or of some countries of Europe, it is the consequence of a worldwide choice of an economic system that leads to this tragedy. An economic system that has at its center the idol of money. God did not want there to be an idol at the center of the world, but rather that men and women bring the world ahead through their work.
Also celebrated Mass at the Shrine of Our Lady of Bonaria, the island's patron and namesake of his native city of Buenos Aires. October 4th, the feast of St. Francis, he went to Assisi where he remembered the poor. Worldliness, he said, leads to vanity, arrogance, and pride. He called them to follow in the footsteps of St. Francis, seeking simplicity and peace.
Francis
has nourished the faith, he has renewed the church, and at the same time, he has renewed society. He has made it more fraternal, but always with the gospel at the forefront, with his life's testimony. Youth do the same thing. Today, in the name of St. Francis, I tell you, I don't have silver nor gold to give you, but I have something much more valuable, the gospel of Jesus. Go with courage, with the gospel in your heart and in your hands. Be witnesses of the faith with your lives. Take Christ to your homes. Announce him to your friends. Welcome him and serve him through the poor.
Annunciatelo tra I vostri amici. Accoglietelo e servitelo nei poveri.
He said comes by embracing the cross.
Habemus Papa.